Hey, how's it going? Are you ready?
You wait on me?
Yeah, we're not here. No, I'm not waiting here. We'll get started in just 1 minute. I have to update the attendance chart myself. Ugh. What's that? Oh, okay. Perfect. Marvin, not here. Vanessa is here? Yeah. No. Yeah. I'm to just mark everybody as absent or as here, but we'll just do that. Who's going to? Okay. How's everybody's week going so far? It is Thursday. It's almost the end of the week. Are you having a good week?
It's fine.
It's fine. Yeah. What about you? Is your week going well? No? Oh, a lot of work things. I got a lot of work things too. I'm super over it. Cool. What did you guys think of the homework? It was handy? Good. You want to back that a little bit? What do you mean by handy? Good to like go back through, read, that kind of thing.
And exercise.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, good. Cool. So I thought I had assigned the exercises in chapter 13 of Eloquent JavaScript, but I guess that's not actually the case. I guess I just like didn't push it on time or something like that. So if you do get full upstream master now, you'll see that that was the homework, but don't worry about it. My bad. So was everybody able to finish the table of contents assignment now? Yeah? What do you guys think of that? All right. I already know what you think. Cool.
Was it supposed to display like in a way that was like a table of contents?
If you wanted it to. Not, I didn't necessarily have anything in the instructions about like formatting it with Roman numerals and perfectly even padding.
No, but if you did it right, should it look like? I mean, mine is not. I mean, it like brings all of the things that are also all of the tags.
Yeah, so in that blue box, table of contents box, you have a list of all of the headings from the text below. That's it. The bonus, I had you add links, but that was a bonus.
Yeah.
But as long as you got the headings in there, as long as you cloned the headings and they were in there.
Something in the box, and I'm gonna take it as a
Yeah, winner. So today we're talking about events. This is roughly the like schedule for today. I put this together before every class, but I don't actually ever count to see if we reach 3 hours. So if this is more than 3 hours, I'll just apologize now. We'll all be here until like midnight. No, I'm just kidding. And here we are at our events lesson, second lesson in phase 2. Do you guys feel like you've learned a lot about JavaScript yet? Maybe? Yes and no?
Yes.
Yes? Good. Cool. Yeah, I would say you guys have. The lab is like a huge accomplishment. You guys built a whole program. You guys are officially programmers. And at work, you can go to the developers that you work with and say, hey, buddy, I'm a programmer too. And they'll love it. They'll love it. Oh, yeah, if you're a designer, especially.
Yeah, I don't want to get laughed at.
Oh, man, you might not just get laughed at. So Christine is still out today. So today we have Joseph of Iowa. Joe took my class the last time I taught it and is now back here filling in for Christine, TAing for us. So I don't know, does that make him like a JavaScript protege?
Dream.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, probably still doesn't have to lead actions, so I don't know about that.
Don't worry about it. Joe did really, really well last time. It was a pleasure to have in the class. So today, just like last time, if you guys have any questions during the lecture, raise your hand and he'll help you out if I'm not around to help you out. So we're going to start today a little differently. We're going to start with a warm-up exercise, which I think we've only done once before. So everybody should run git pull upstream master to get all the changes. Oh wait, I have to push one more change and then you should run git upstream master. Okay, almost there. Okay, now run git pull upstream master. Okay.
Exercises.
So this warm-up is going to be under the folder warm-up in 08, today's class 8, on events. What we have is we have an HTML file, a folder of images, a JS file, and a CSS file. This CSS file we can totally ignore. That's just so that it looks a little bit pretty, or not even really that pretty. The HTML file is good to look at so that we can see what it is we're working with, the markup. And then the JavaScript file has steps, just like the exercise from last time did. We're going to work through this for maybe 30 minutes. I'll check in every 10 minutes or so and see where we're at. If you open the HTML file, it looks like this. What we're going to be building is a slider. It's going to use a timer to rotate this image. So this is, here we have one nice image. There's two more over here. There's one here, and then there's another one here. And what you're going to do is, using JavaScript, get this row of images and rotate it. And then every second or so. And then when you get to the last one, all the way back to the beginning. All right? Have at it. Raise your hand if you have questions. I'll be here. Joe will be in the back. Okay.
Thank you. Oh, yeah, that's right. The JS. I know.
I just drag and drop it out. Just drag and drop it.
I just dropped it.
So then one just dragging on your package, but you just like file so that's like one time.
Because I was like, oh, I gotta look at something.
You have access to everything.
Oh, yeah, let's get more. Oh, no, it's fine. I had already bid it. So
It was like, I don't know how to do it.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay, I think it's been a little bit more than 10 minutes. I forget what time we started, but how are we doing? Raise your hand if you have finished step 1. Raise your hand high so that I can see. Okay, great. Keep going. Let's see. Let's maybe in 10 minutes I'll check in again, and everybody should be on step 2 or 3.
a method where I can do that. Yeah.
All right, checking in one more time. How are we doing? Raise your hand if you're on question number 3, prompt number 3. High, so high, so high. Okay, what about number 4? So high, so high. Okay. We'll do 10 more minutes. And at the end of 10 minutes, we'll go through it all together. So, oh, I see this too.
Just a transition. The only thing I'm trying to figure out, I don't know how to the delta is offset, which is 1,000 multiplied by the slide. And then we are adding 1 to 5 slide after. After each iteration.
Because that's what I'm sure. Yeah. No, yeah. No, I Yes. I do more, but I mean, I get on the trying to figure out this. Oh, it's like,
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yes, the ones.
Who is finished? Who's on, is it 4 steps or 5 steps?
4.
4. Who's on step 4? Who's finished step 4? Nobody, because I already asked who was finished. Who has finished step 3? So we can keep, I can give you guys a couple more minutes to keep going, or we can start doing it all together. Yeah. Let's do a vote. How about that? Who would like to do it all together? Okay. We don't need to vote on the other one. That one very clearly wins. Sorry for everybody who didn't want to do it together. If it's really important to you, you can step outside and keep working on it and then come back. I don't want you to leave, but okay. So we're building a gallery. We've already got the markup here. We've got a container, which is a div, and then a list. And these list items each have a background image that is an image. What we want to do is, these are positioned so that they're all in a line going off the screen to the right. And what we want to do is get this UL, this JS gallery, the gallery itself, a list of images, and translate its position. So every second, we're going to move it to the left, the equivalent of 1 slide width. And then at the end, we'll move it back to 0, so back to the beginning. Okay. Let's see. That explains all of this. So step 1. We need to get the JS gallery list, which if we look at our markup is this UL, the unordered list elements, and save it to a variable. Then from that, we need to pull an array of the gallery items, JS gallery items, which are the individual list items. How do I do that? I have no idea. Literally none. Yeah, Alyssa.
You can do it this way. Var gallery equals document query selector and parentheses equals JS dash gallery.
Yeah. I don't know how this works, but that looks promising. Cool. Now I need to get the individual LIs. How do I do that? Michael, do you want to help us out? No? Okay. Sure.
Should we say query selector all to get all of them?
So that's a great question. What is query selector all going to give me back?
All of it? Oh yeah, this is just the class.
Everything with a class of JS gallery. Looking at my markup, how many items have a class of JS gallery? Just one.
Oh, yeah.
So query selector works. It'll get the first one, but we've written our markup such that it's also the only one. And then what we'll do is we'll get the individual element back. With query selector all, we'll get an array. And then we'll have to pluck the first one out of the array, which we could just use this and then do that. But that's a great question. Yeah.
Could you also use the class C gallery to slash gallery? So this seems like it's a unique.
Yeah, you absolutely can. But then Fadon, our designer, is going to come along and say, I need to rebuild this gallery. So he's going to change the markup. And he's going to change, this is no longer called a gallery, it's now called a slider. And it has a blue border and white text and pink frills on the side. I don't know. It's probably, he's cringing. This sounds like an ugly gallery. But that's because I'm designing for it. Okay. So this is a really good convention to follow when you're working with the DOM. Is to prefix any classes that you're using in JavaScript with JS dash. And never apply styling to a class or ID or anything that is prefixed with JS. But that's a great question, yeah. I actually meant to go over that in a minute. Okay, so we've got our gallery. Now we need our individual gallery items. Who wants to help me with that? Sarah.
So you var gallery items equals and then gallery first selector all. And the .js gallery item.
Perfect. There we go. Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. That will work. Yeah.
Why do you want to use gallery dot query selector all instead of document query selector all? Is there specificity or is it like speed?
Maybe speed, but with the size of our app, like we're talking like nano, micro, very, very small performance gains. To the point that it's not really worth it. The only reason I had you do this is to show you that you can. Or the only reason I led you to do this with the instructions was because you can. But you didn't have to. You can use, you didn't have to use query selector at all. You could have used get elements by class name. You could have come in and decided that my markup is terrible, and you want to give this ID or this gallery an ID, and then get it by the ID. Totally fine.
But this way has benefits because you're more specific. You don't get
class names that are, let's say someone made another gallery, but it's under JS Gallery 2.
Yeah. This way we're getting, if there's 2 galleries on the page, we're only getting gallery items that are part of this gallery. That's true. Yeah. Then we would, if we were adding multiple galleries to the page, we would want to give these an ID or some sort of unique identifier so that when we get them with query selector or whatever other method, we know we're getting gallery that we want. Okay, so great job. That's step 1. Step 2. We're going to transition our gallery from one slide to the next. And I already kind of walked you through how that works. We're going to get the width of a slide, which is the LI. And we're going to move the gallery itself, the width of one slide, every second. And then when we're at the last slide, we're going to move it back to 0. I'm not stuck in a box. So to start, we're going to create a variable called slide count. For slide count. There we go. And we're going to set it equal to the number of slides. What did you guys do for this? I'm curious.
Count the number of LI.
You came here, you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, 4. Like that? Cool. Equals 4. Yeah. And then you probably put a semicolon. So slide count is equal to 4. That's great. Did anybody do gallery items dot length? Yeah. That's fine. Obviously, if you did 4 here, yeah, that's perfectly fine. This might be more reliable if we were working with like a CMS or something where these images are determined by a user. So then they come in and add another one, and we're gonna have to say, oh, sorry, wait, I gotta go back to the code, I gotta change this number. Okay, now you're good. Okay. So yeah, gallery items. Now we need to create another variable called slide bar slide width is equal to the width of a single slide. How did people get the width of a slide? Did CSS? How did you do that? Yeah, and see that I think I made them all 1,000 pixels?
Yeah.
Perfect. Did you have a question? Cool. We can absolutely do that, just like we can count the slides here and put in the number 4. But what's a way using JavaScript that we can figure out what the width of a slide is? Marvin knows? Oh, I have Kit Kats.
Only shots you can get this.
You want all the Kit Kats? That's what you said?
I volunteered for trying to.
No, you get negative chocolate for that. Yeah.
You can get the client width, which is the width of the image. I think
Yeah.
width is in separate places, but I use client width.
Perfect.
So I say bar slide width equals gallery. Grab one of the images in the gallery, so it shows 0.
Like that. Yeah, and that will give us 1,000, the number 1,000. Perfect.
Does it always return pixels or can it return?
It's going to return a JavaScript number, which is going to represent pixels. And that gets to be a little bit confusing because we'll do something like gallery, let's say we'll have a gallery item. We access the styles of a DOM object with style, and then we could do something like width is equal to 50. This will not set the width to 50 pixels. In order to do that, we have to do this. So the browser's only going to help us or make this easy when it's doing it. But when we're trying to do it, it's going to be like, nah, man, you got to do all this extra work. Cool.
So we use offset width.
Yep, you can absolutely use offset width. There's a difference between the two. I think it has to do with whether or not you've got in your CSS bounding box set to box style set to bounding box or something like that, and how the margins are calculated into the height and width of your element. Yeah.
Where did you get the client width? Where did you know that?
The client width. So if you remember last time, we used console.dir. Console.dir, if you console.dir an element, you'll see all the properties and methods that it has. One of them is client width. Another one is offset width. And that's where you can see it.
I also found it in CSS, W3 School.
Yeah. Cool. So we're done with step 2. Let's move on to step 3. So we need to set a timer to run every, let's do 1 second. 5 seconds is an eternity. Let's do 1 second. The one that we care, or the way we're going to set a timer is using the set interval function, which is a native JavaScript function. Set interval takes 2 arguments, a function and then the interval. And it's going to run that function every interval, whatever interval we pass in. So we'll pass in a function and 1,000. And it'll run our function every second. Okay. So I think we're good here. So I'm going to define a function, which we're going to call transition slide, which is just going to console.log, what did I say, call, and then we're going to do set interval transition slide 1,000. So set interval, it takes a function and then an interval, and it's going to call this function every second, or every the length of our, whatever the length of our interval is. Another thing you can do in JavaScript is define functions in line. So this would work. Or, well, that would work, but you'd most likely see it like this. So function, right, we're defining a function right here in line, and then passing in the interval right after that.
What's more common in practice?
This is more common in practice.
How come?
Can you explain it?
It's short. So what we were doing before was defining our function up here, and then passing in a reference to the function. We don't necessarily need to do that. We can just define the function in line, as it sounds in line, in the line that we're going to use this function, and then the interval right after that. This is more common in practice. It's shorter, a little clearer. The code, or the function we're going to call is right there, and then especially in ES6 because we have shorthand functions which look like this, and so it's like even cleaner. Like all this can be on a single line, and that's not a big deal. Actually, I wouldn't even need these brackets here. I could just do that.
What's the equal?
This is an error. This is part of ES 2016. So this is newer JavaScript. That may or may not work for you. For now, we're going to do this. Okay. So let's see it actually. Let's see it run. And yeah, here we go. There we go. And then refresh. There we go. There we go. Every second. Called. All right. So let's see. I'm going to comment this out because we're going to come down here and we're going to define it all again. So actually, I'm going to bring this all the way down here, and then we're going to define another. Like this, and like this, and then like that. Okay. Now we're good. So we've got our function. It's being called every second. What we want to do in our function now, excuse me, excuse me, is transition our slides. Sorry?
You said the transition as in changing the position.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. Oops. Okay. So let's read these instructions. So we're going to edit our transition slide, declare a variable called current slide, and set it equal to 1. So here I'll do var current slide is equal to 1. And then within our function, we need to create an if-else statement to transition our slide. The if condition is if whatever number is stored in current slide is less than the total number of slides, then we want to transition everything to the left. I.e. go from slide 1, transition, and now slide 2 is visible. Otherwise, we're at the very last slide. So what we want to do is translate back to 0, so that the first slide is shown. Does that make sense? Okay. Cool. So who wants to walk me through that? I've completely forgotten how to write if-else statements. Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a try.
Okay.
If parentheses, current slide is less than slide count, close parentheses, and then, yeah, okay, good, that.
Did we declare slide count? I forget.
Yes.
Did we?
Yeah, slide count.
I forgot to declare. So var slide. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, you're right. Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. I'm sorry. I just didn't see it. Okay. Woo. All right. Keep going. Sorry, that's my bad.
Oh, that's all I got to.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, we're getting into like uncharted territory, right? For most people. How many people finished this? Finished all of this. Okay. That's okay. We can do it together. Did I show you guys already how to change the style property on an element? No. I didn't show you guys that just like a minute ago, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Style that.
Yeah.
Something. Oh, the style attribute. So if you wanted to change the width, for example, you could
Yeah, width, or maybe the translate property.
translate.
Translate is transform. That's right. This is, I guess, getting into sort of advanced CSS. So we've got, where do we have our gallery? What we're going to be moving is this UL. Do we have that stored somewhere in our JavaScript?
Yes.
Yeah. Under gallery, right? And then how do we work with, this is an element, an HTML element. How do we work with the styles on this HTML element? Yeah, dot style.
Why
And
do you want to change the style of gallery items?
we're moving the whole gallery. And we want to move it using CSS. Using CSS's transform property. And we're going to set it equal to, does everybody know how transforms work or translates work? No. Okay. So, okay. So we have a class. Let's call it cat. This is a CSS class, and somewhere on our page we have a CSS element. When the page loads, we want to move it to the left 50 pixels. To do that, we're going to use the transform CSS property and the translate x. What's that? Oh, yeah. This is just for demonstration purposes. But the translate x property. Translate x is a derivative of translate, which takes x and y coordinates.
But the translate x is just the x coordinates.
Yep.
Is it the same as we have like position absolute and then
Left, right, 0. So not really. Unless, for instance, in CSS, if you want to vertically center something, one of the ways of doing that is setting it to a position absolute, a top of 50%, and then transform, translate y, negative 50%. And what that does is takes the element, brings it halfway down, and then the top of your element is halfway, vertically centered. And then you translate it back up 50%, so then you have it vertically centered. Okay. So this is what the syntax looks like, but we only care about moving our cat to the left. So this is what we're going to do. This is going to move it 50 pixels to the left.
Can we use percentages?
Yeah, you can in CSS. But
You just-
or here you could calculate the percentages here. But we have the width of each individual slide in pixels, right? From up before. So what we're going to do here is like this. And then what we need to do is put something here based on the current slide number and our slide width, so that every second when this gets called, it will move over one slide. Does anyone want to take a guess at how we do that? Slide width. So we're working with string, so slide width. And then put like px here. Sorry? No, go for it. Do we want to run this and see what happens? Well, let's find out. Well, it kind of worked. Yeah, we got to make this negative. All right. Well, it worked once. How can we maybe make it so that it will work based on what the current slide number is? Yeah, and then current slide, we're going to increment current slide. And then it stops. We want it to go back to the beginning. How might we do that? Is that all we have to do? We're going to set this translate x back to 0. And so we've got this long element, and it's translated -1,000, -2,000, -3,000. And then if we translate it back to 0, we'll be back here. Does that make sense? I'm going to push this. And then we're going to go on a break. It's much later than I meant to do. Okay, let's go on a break now. Let's just do 5 minutes. And then we'll come back and we're going to talk about events. I'll leave this up.
As far as getting it to keep going, like you said that like getting it to keep getting it to and I was trying to like add slide width. Well, I guess my question was like, how did you realize? Oh, it's because I need to multiply it
By the slide count?
I just said it, then
Yeah. Good job. Good job.
I just had to say it out loud.
Yeah, hey man. It's very common. A lot of people process things externally. Otherwise, we would have to apply to each individual slide. We have to loop through the list of every individual slide and apply it to each one.
But the idea is the window, that have a little bit, items are underneath. If you're moving the UL over, I don't know, so maybe it's because you're moving in a negative number. So you're tricking the LI to the group itself.
The LIs
They're still, so they're out.
normally have to list.
Yeah, but these are for, I
Yeah,
got that.
Those each individual items like one that the whole list. So we're rather than trying to move one.
So, oh, so this was on a smaller topic. maybe I'll try. This is on to 30%. You can see else.
So I mean, the gallery containers, yeah, the gallery containers, that's set to the same grid as the single slide.
Yeah.
And it has overflow in, so it's
Yeah.
slides. So it's kind of like you've got a window, that's got a the behind the window, that's a little bit, move it to the left, to the left.
That's awesome.
They're all there. And these be like, happy for your screen.
That's what they are.
Yeah, they're like over here. Yeah, and so, but then, I was like, how does it work? How does that stay with the family? I'm gonna change it.
Yeah, that's all.
But I wanna understand it better. Because I probably would have been like, oh, I would have just go take it,
Oh, yeah.
and then you would have to scroll like that. To do it. It's not a value. Oh,
Yeah.
let's see that, this more market.
Yeah, this is nice. Next time, we're gonna modify this exercise, if we get that for one month, we'll be add buttons below it, and we'll click the buttons, and that's what's in there. Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
Why, you should have just one list item to your HTML, and then have something that changes URL.
Yes, absolutely. So,
Slide like this, or what
no,
is-
it would not. What would happen is, it would change images, and then that image would have to load, and then after it had loaded, then you'd see the image.
Okay.
What do you want to have the slides go opposite way instead of that way? Want them to go that way?
Yeah.
And you get rid of the minus that like kills the like, it doesn't work. What is it?
So think of like XY axes. We've got our X axis here,
Yeah.
and it's currently at 0. We want to go, if we have a positive number, then we'll go to the right. So like 1, 2, 3, 4. We want to go to the left, so negative. 1, 2, 3.
So you can still develop it going into the right too.
You could, but you'd have to position all your images over there.
So you
Oh,
have to
that's
change.
the start.
Yeah. So at the very beginning, this first image, this, if we think of that x-axis, this is the 0 right here. And the first slide is lined up against that, which is why we have to go negative.
But you, like you said, you're not moving the images. Like I put a border around the UL, and it only covers the, doesn't cover, and then it disappears.
That might have something to do with doing like absolute positioning and flex and stuff like that. So that it might be that.
Okay.
Could you set this up as a for loop, so instead of having it run back to the front, it just kept going to the next one again?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Also, I cannot figure out what's on line 90.
Like 90. You wrote so much code. You can't read proper style. Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're going to get the style property off of something that we think is an object, but JavaScript is better. So something.
CSS, so I need to do something.
So we're probably happening with a gallery. Just go off of that.
I have no idea what this one is.
Oh, that's the CSS. That person.
Or, yeah.
Oh. It's select their notation for the CSS. Dots. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
The old trick.
We say shit there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get rid of it.
Yeah, I already got rid of it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So you grab the CSS function in quotes.
Mhm.
Is that common? It's extremely grabbing quotes. Is that common just going between CSS?
Yeah, we have to pass it a string or assign a string value to it, and then that will write it to CSS in the browser.
Do you do that with like HTML as well? Like, is it common to grab anything that's not JavaScript as a string?
So if we don't do that, then it thinks we're trying to call a JavaScript function, which we're not. So
In like production, is that way to string, so it's libraries that handle that?
there are libraries that handle doing CSS and JavaScript. There's a bunch now. That's kind of like a very in vogue thing to do. But behind the scenes, when you're actually writing to the CSS, that's because it just keeps, there's an object, a style object, which is built of all the properties from the CSS that are applied to that element. And they're kept as like any object, like keys and properties. Those properties are all strings. Yeah. All right. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so today we're talking about events, which we touched on a little bit last time. They're a way for us to respond to user input in the browser. Events are part of a bigger, really, really important paradigm in application development as it relates to the browser. And that paradigm is called event-driven development. Most applications fall under this paradigm. It's really simple. Basically, the user does something which emits an event, and we listen to that event. And when our event gets called, or when that event happens, we're going to call an event handler, which is going to take care of that event, and whatever we define taking care of that event means. So we'll attach an event to an object or an element in the browser. When we say that we're listening for a particular event, we'll attach a function, which is going to serve as our event handler. And then every time that event happens, say it's somebody clicking on a button, every time somebody clicks on that button, our function is going to get called. And then inside that function, we'll handle that event. We'll submit a form, we'll throw up a pop-up that is going to bother the user, and then they'll leave our web page, or something like that. In the browser, there are lots of things, lots of different types of events, or lots of objects that emit events that we can listen to. The first two on this list are objects that we're familiar with already. The document and the body. The document and the window. These are both objects that emit events that we can listen to. Like when the window is resized, maybe we want to adjust the layout a little bit. There are three more though. One is the mouse, right? Somebody clicks, or there's different events for if someone pushes the mouse down versus when they lift it up, or when they double click. Another is, oh, and tap events on mobile devices fall under your mouse. We also have key presses, when someone pushes a button on the keyboard. This isn't super common, but it's an accessibility thing, right? Being able to use your keyboard instead of a mouse to navigate around an application. It's also a lot faster. Yeah, games. Games probably have lots of key press events. And then the last one is forms. These will be if somebody types in user input into a form, they submit the form, or they change input in a form. And we can listen to all of those.
Which one is like someone searching for something?
That would be a form submission. A search form is a form with an input and a button, and the button has an hourglass on it. And then someone submits that form, and we're listening for the submit event on that form.
Do you have a time base on that?
Yeah, that was you, Alex, right? Yeah, somebody always asks that. And the answer is not really. So we can't attach an event saying like, run this function when it's 9:30. And this event, posts something in Slack that tells me to shut up because you all want to go home. Or something like that. We can't do that. But what we can do is create a timer. And the timer runs every second and checks if it's 9:30. And if it's 9:30, then it posts in Slack telling me to shut up so y'all can go home. So kind of. Or rather like effectively, but not really. That's a really good question.
Or almost like a timeout function that says, you've been inactive for
Yeah.
minutes and log it up.
Yeah, that's one timer type that we have in JavaScript. We use set interval, which is going to run every second. You can do set timeout, which will run after a certain period of time has passed. So 5 minutes from now. If nothing's happened, then log the user out. Yeah. Okay, so we already kind of went over these. These are some window and document events. Scroll is one that I didn't talk about. Load and unload are ones that I didn't talk about. Load is it used to be a really important one. It's a little less important. It used to be that browsers were kind of slow, especially at rendering the page. And what could sometimes happen if you had a big application was you would call your JavaScript, but the browser hadn't finished building the HTML page yet. So you'd call your JavaScript, and then either a bunch of errors would happen, or you would call your JavaScript and nothing would happen because the HTML that your JavaScript depended on hadn't been built yet by the browser. So we've got this load event that we can listen to. So we can build our application and then wait for this load event to fire. And when it does, then we'll attach our application to the page. We don't really have to worry about that too much anymore, but, or at least I don't. Maybe we still should, and being a bad developer. So mouse events. These are all the ones you would think of. Click, double click, yeah.
So going back to the load that you mentioned, when we put the script tag before closing the body, so does it do the same thing for us?
Effectively, yeah, and that's why. That's why we put our script tag at the bottom of the page. And so in theory, like the rest of the page is built by them.
So you're saying you don't need to use document.load?
Sorry?
You don't need to use document.load?
No. Do you? Well, you don't really need it. I haven't run into the problems.
You're relying on the browsers being faster?
Yeah.
So it's not like you're
It's not like-
something else.
Yeah, it's not like I'm
It's
super.
like you're sending
Yeah. Yeah, right. It's another instance of me, like, I don't know, being lazy or something. I don't know. It's whatever. I have not really run into any problems, and I guarantee most of you are not going to either, and that most of you are not going to use onload. But yeah.
So is this considered not a best practice then anymore?
It is considered a I would argue like a lingering best practice, right? It used to be the case that if you didn't do that, you would, like 50% of the time someone visited your site, they would have a problem. But that's not really the case. Okay, so mouse events. We've got the ones that you would think of, click, double click. We also have mouse enter and mouse leave. What do you guys think those do? When those get fired, yeah. Yeah, so as we saw with our slides, right? HTML elements they exist in kind of like a box on the page. Mouse enter happens when the mouse literally enters that box, and then mouse leave happens when that mouse leaves that box.
Is it much harder to like create a hover feature than a feature? Or developers are always like, oh, no, we can't do it.
Well,
I feel like that shouldn't be that hard.
No, so two things. Like one, like every developer's first response is always gonna be like, no, that's gonna take forever.
That's why I'm here, so I'm like, no, I've learned that that's wrong.
The other thing that's at play is oftentimes designers are like, there's no simple hover effect. It's like, we're gonna hover over this and it's just gonna get like a little bit bigger. It's like, no, we're gonna hover over this and then fireworks are gonna go off, a steamship is gonna roll in filled with, I don't know, stuff like bears and they're all handing out roses and then stuff like that. So those are the two things that are at play. Mostly the second one, maybe, I don't know.
Is it also dealing with the timing of the user's interaction of it? Like when you hover over leave, like for example, I'm not very. I kind of try to figure out what I want to do, so I move the mouse around and so I hover and I leave and I'm like, oh, what's this? Or
Someone enters and then leaves really quickly.
yeah.
And we've got like this 10-second animation with all the boats and the bears and the fireworks and stuff that's supposed to happen. Yeah. So that's up to the developer. One of two things will happen. One, like the animation will continue, and then the poor user has to sit there and watch all of this madness unfold. Or the other thing is that the animation would play back, however far you progress through it, or it would just stop and then disappear. Hopefully hopefully like the second one happens, very best case. At the very least, hopefully that it just like stops. The poor user doesn't have to sit there and watch all that. Man. Okay, so key presses. There are 3 key press events: pushing it down, lifting it up, and then pressing it. So like the compound event of pushing it down and lifting it up. And then when you do that, and you attach your event handler to this, you get an event object, which we'll talk about in a second. And that event object has a property within it which tells you which key was pressed. So we can't necessarily attach an event to the enter key, right, when someone hits enter or return. But we can attach it to a key press, and then inside our event handler, check to see if it was the enter key. And if it was, submit the form or do whatever. And if not, then just like stay embedded or leave our function. And then form events. Focus and blur are on input elements themselves. So you'll have a text element for someone to type their email address, and you'll emit focus and blur events when they click on it versus when they click outside of it. Change will happen when someone interacts with a form element. So someone clicks on a text element, or they click on a text element again and change the text. And then submit happens when they push the submit button. Yeah.
Does change also regulate like the complete like changing a form? Like if you select one option and everything else like downstream of that form changes because of an option, or is that?
That is all logic that you would have to write as the developer. This will fire, if I have a text input, this will fire every time any change happens in that text input. So if I'm typing out my email address, this event will get fired every time I push a key in that input for my email address. So Z once, A twice, C 3 times. So, did you have a question?
No.
Okay.
Sorry, I might squeeze one in.
Sorry?
I was just thinking, can I squeeze one in?
You're cut off. Okay. You're not cut off. Never cut off. So those are all of the events. Like I said before, there are 2 parts to working with events in JavaScript. The first is listening for an event, or getting an element and deciding that we want to listen for an event on that element. And the second is writing and then attaching an event handler. The event handler is just a function. And it's a function that's going to get called when our event is emitted or actually happens. So the browser's going to fire an event. For instance, when someone clicks on something. And then our function, our event handler, will get called. All right. So we're going to hop over into Atom. And under the exercises folder, we have 6 exercises that we're going to get through today. So many exercises. And we're going to start with exercise 1. Okay. Exercise 1 is simply to play with on-ready state change. And window. So what we're going to do is write a function and attach it to onReady state change. And let's just console log that out, I guess. Let's write our first event. How about that, actually? So onReady state change is a special kind of event that the document object is going to emit. So all I'm doing here is assigning a function that's going to console.log the string called whenever onReady state change is called. The question I have for you is, show of hands, how many times do you think this is going to get run? Whoa, that's a weird question to be asking, right? Who says once?
Depends on what you do. Is everything change affect the window width? You change the window width?
No, this is gonna get called when as the document is getting ready,
So
kind of
that's
as the name
different
suggests.
from onReady.
Yeah, or on load or any of those. Yeah, it's slightly different. Yeah, and we'll talk about onReady in just a second. So just once, I think I heard it. Just once. Who says maybe twice? Who says 3 times? Who says 10 times? Yeah, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to refresh it a bunch of times and then some of it. So let's see, where is my terminal? We say called when we mean like that event is emitted or it happens, and then our event handler is called or run. Yeah. So. Yes. So onReady state change. When this happens, we're going to call this function. That's I guess what we're referring to. Calling this function. Because JavaScript is super, super weird. Yeah.
Is it called twice as you said that JavaScript runs twice?
No, that's totally different. That's talking about JavaScript compilation, compiling our JavaScript. That's different. This is getting called twice by the browser or the document object.
This wasn't ready, and now it's ready.
Yeah. Let's see. We're going to console.log. Let's see. Yeah, that's what it's for. Console.log. The onReady state change is going to get called every time ready state gets changed. And so we're going to call document.readyState. And I'm actually going to call it once when my JavaScript loads. I'm going to refresh the page. So, you guys see that? Is that too small?
Dude, I didn't get the loading system.
Yeah.
Did you call it outside of your function as well? Okay, that's why. Loading, interactive, and complete.
Can you go back to the code, please?
Absolutely. Space this out a little bit more. This is the ready state you were talking about? No. What were you thinking of? What are you thinking of on loading? Sorry?
When?
Like 10 minutes ago when we first started talking about
Hopefully
this?
document uploading.
Yeah.
I think dot load is just a jQuery version of onload, right?
I think so, yeah, of Windows on.
Yeah.
Yeah, jQuery, yeah, abstracts that. So loading, interactive, and complete. These are the three states that the document will be in. This event, it's fired. So on ready state change, right? It starts off as loading. This means that the browser is still getting the HTML. Interactive refers to when the HTML is built and you can sort of see it yet. And then complete is going to happen nearly, right after that. It's when it's finished loading all the page, it's applied all the styles, it's running your JavaScript, etc.
What would you care about interactive?
Interactive versus complete.
Not what would you care? Interactive.
So what you might want to do is document.onReadyStateChange if document.readystate equals where it happens some function that runs our application.
As a safer, it's, if you need to like a common extension or something, and you get to the page, you don't need to drop that, so that way you can just kind of mark it.
Oh. Okay. So I'm going to comment all this out.
Why do you do it outside of function as well to make sure that you get it?
Oh, so I ran it outside of the function here so that we could see the third state of it, or the initial state of it, which is loading.
But otherwise it won't pick it up until it's actually started.
Yeah, so it's going to fire a change event when it changes from loading to interactive, and then we're going to console log whatever the document.ready state is. And because it's firing the event, we know that that value changed, so what we're going to get is the new value of it. So if we didn't do this, we'd never see that it starts off at a different value. So Marvin, that was a great question. That was a great question too, Michael. This is why you might want to use that. And we can compare it to window.load. I'm going to do the same thing. So window.load called. I'm going to make sure that I comment these out. And I'm going to come back here and I'm going to hit refresh. And write it down. Why did that not work? Because it's on load, not load. That's why. There we go. So that only got called once.
Can you go back?
Actually could. I will, wait, no, can I do that? Everything that we type in class, I will push after class if you're worried about taking notes. That way you can just follow along and you'll still have all the code afterwards. Okay. So window.load. So then the next question might be, which one should you use? Or which one is better to use? And for that, what we want to do is what do we think the order is going to be that this is going to get printed out at? It's going to print in total, interactive, complete, and called. Let's change this to something like window loaded. Do we think that one of these is maybe faster than the others, or happens sooner than the others? Who thinks on ready state? You think it's faster? What about on load? Who thinks that? I'm actually not sure. Let's find out. Let's verify this to make sure. I'm sitting here refreshing the page. I don't know if you can really see it, but
Isn't like the window load indicative of the ready state?
yeah, I think this one happens after this one does. Yeah. So, sorry. Yeah. So you mentioned jQuery before. How many people have experience working with jQuery? Yeah, jQuery has a load event that abstracts this away. What I'm fairly certain it's doing behind the scenes is attaching it to this window.onload event. So that when that happens, since it's most likely going to happen last, and so we can therefore be most assured that our page is actually ready for all of our JavaScript, we'll call it that. All right. How do we feel about that? Pretty good? So if you don't feel great about it, you don't really need to worry about it. Like I don't. If you want, you can just write a bunch of JavaScript down here. Oops, no space. No space. There you go. Write a bunch of JavaScript down here, and you'll probably be fine. So let's see, I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to bring this down back here. We got this, and then that, and then let's save the file so that you guys can have it later. And then I'm going to close these, and I'm going to go back to the side. That's exercise 1. But like I said at the beginning of exercise 1, those are special kinds of events. And they're special in the way that we create them, right? The document already is built for us in JavaScript, so we don't need to get it, right? The document's already there. And those onload and onReady state change are going to be properties on that document object or the window object, whether we assign a function to them or not. Those are the only events where that's the case. Otherwise, we need to be listening for the event in order for it to actually mean it. These are going to get fired no matter what. Oops. Let's see. We already talked about that. Okay. We already talked about that too. Here we go. So what we need to do is talk about actually creating event listings. So we're going to get an element from the page, just like we would, just like we did last class and in the homework. Here I'm using query selector, but you can use element by ID, tag name, whatever. We're going to get the element, and then we're going to add an event listener to it. This will also already have certain properties for events, like we saw last time when we console.dir, I think it was an A or something like that. We saw a long list of properties that were null, and they all started with on. I think it's most common to use add event list. I don't know, maybe. There could be some cross-browser differences between how on-click is handled. But yeah, add event listener. is the one that I see most often. It's the one that I use most often. So we're going to add an event listener. We're going to determine what event it is we're listening for, in this case, a click on our button element, and then we're going to pass a function. This is the inline function, just like we talked about a few minutes ago when we talked about set timeout.
If you're working in ES6, are you still using that grid selector to grab elements from the DOM?
Yep. Or jQuery or something else to get it from the DOM. Behind the scenes, jQuery is probably doing this. Oh, let's see. Let's actually see that in action. Do you guys want to do this one together or independently? Independently? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. We didn't talk. Let's talk through this, the rest of the stuff, and then we'll do it together. So another thing we need to talk about is this event object. When we call this function or create this function, we're given an argument to our function that we can use or not use. And that argument is an object which represents the event that just happened. So someone clicks on this button. We're going to call our event handler. And our event handler is given an object that represents this click. It contains a bunch of information about the event, including the target of the event, which will most often, but not always, be the element that we were listening on. The time that the event happened, the x and y coordinates of the event, a bunch of other information, some of which is sometimes useful, some of which is almost always useful. And then we're given a method for controlling the event called prevent default, which we can call to prevent the default browser behavior for that event. So if someone clicks on a link, we can prevent the default behavior for that link and stop the browser from navigating to that page or trying to navigate to that page. Prevent default. There we go. Okay, and now we're getting too far. So here I'm going to write two event handlers. I'll write one, and then we'll write one together, and then we'll do this other part down here independently. So let's see, what I want to do is get this content div using query selector. Thinking back to my slide, that was the first step, right? Now I'm going to do content.onClick is equal to a function. And this function is just going to console.log the string called. Just like when we were talking about onload and onReady state change.
Shortcut for open console.
Command Shift J. Oops. There we go. Now I'm gonna go back to the browser and I'm gonna refresh. And nothing changed. Oh, I'd forgotten the period in my selector.
Oh, but I was wondering about that.
Yeah. Document.query selector, and then we're passing in the selector, which starts the period because it's a class. And if I come here, there it is. So if I click here, where my element is, it gets called. Yeah, I'm clicking it. So every time it gets called. This is one way to write an event handler.
You just click the button a whole bunch of times.
Well, it's not the button. I'm getting the div here instead of the actual button. But we can do the button. How about that?
I don't do my click the button.
Well, when you're clicking the button, you're also clicking the content too, right?
I'm just saying yours was called 26 times, mine was only called 3 times because I clicked this counter 3 times.
You click this button. That's fair. I don't have an answer to that. So this is one way of calling an event. I'm going to comment it out and show you the other way, which is button.add event listener. What's in there? There we go. Add event listener is a function that takes 2 arguments. The first is the event that we want to listen for, and the second is a function, which is just going to console.log the string called, just like before. Nope. It can be double or single. Totally up to you. I was already holding the shift key, so. I'm going to go back to the page, refresh, and now when I push the button, ta-da, it gets called. These are the 2 ways of defining an event handler. Yeah.
So there's like some crazy list of all these events somewhere.
Yep. One way to find it is, well, one way is to Google it. The other way is console.dir, and then the element. And then if I open the element, scroll down, here's a bunch right here.
Is there like a add an extension or something that can do the auto same way you can in the browser?
That can do the autocomplete the same way you do.
Yeah, you try to type it.
You can get a JS, like JavaScript snippets plugin for Atom. It would let you do that. Atom comes with some. Like I should be able to do like button.add. There you go. I can have complete that. But yeah, I'm sure that exists. I don't have one though. Cool. So we've created our first event handler and our first event. Let's talk about the event object. So the only thing that's different here is in my function, I'm accepting this parameter event and then just console logging. Just like as we saw before, we don't have to take this parameter. The browser will always try and pass it to our function, but if we don't add it here as a parameter when we're defining our function, then we don't get it. So if I run this and then click this button, I get this object. It's a mouse event. If I open it up, there's a ton of stuff in here. Client X and Y, it's the X and Y coordinates on the screen. Control key, that's if I was holding the control key down. Is trusted. I don't know what that is. Is what?
Security.
Yeah. Bunch of other stuff. The one that you're going to care about by far the most is the target. This is the element that was clicked. So if I come here and print event.target, and then come back and refresh the page and click this button, we're going to get the button itself. Yeah. Yeah. So our event handler is the second part of working with events. The first is the event itself. The handler is what's going to happen when that event happens. So the browser is going to register that there's a click event. And then it's going to check to see if it has a handler for that event, which is what we're defining in that function. And if it does, then it's going to call that function.
What's the handler in relation to this?
So it's all just like talking around this and what we're doing right here. So adding an event listener is registering that we're listening for a click event on this button. This is the event that we're listening for. This function is our handler. So when someone clicks on this button, we'll call our function. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right. Let's do this together. Oh, yeah.
So what are the use cases for those two? I mean, what is, in which cases we use that button? Which cases we use that add?
I always use add event listener, and that's a personal preference. I also almost always see add event listener, but I don't have a good reason for why that is.
Same.
Yeah, they're pretty interesting. Well, add event listener is more generic. I can pass any event here, whereas on click is very specific. This is an event handler only for a click event on this element. But at the same time, like I'm saying, I only care about the click event here. So.
So the second one's best practice, better practice.
Yeah, I hesitate in saying that because I don't know necessarily if there are reasons why this one's better than this one. This is just the one that I see more often. I almost never see this.
It's kind of like the equivalent, like in jQuery, we have like you can do element dot click and then run the function.
Yeah.
It's better practice to do element dot on and then it wants you to do click. So I think
Yeah.
it's just a industry standard.
Yeah, but not necessarily for. I mean, maybe there is a reason, and I just don't know it.
It probably allows for scalability. So let's say you change click to what's it called, key
press.
Then now you've got a component that you can even pass the type in.
Yeah.
And now it's easy to scale it up to do more versus having to change the word on click into something else.
Yeah, maybe it's that. You had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could maybe put multiple, like, click and something else in there, like a click.
I was actually thinking about this the other day, because in jQuery you can.
Certain ones, like key press, key up, key down.
Like, can I do that?
Different types of events.
But what about like click and I think it's double click? DB click? DBL click? For now. Nope, it didn't like that.
Because once some of them interfere, like you can't have the same event happening.
Yeah, click and double click. What if I do click and like that? We'll try like this and then let's see. So, nope, the click doesn't work.
So you were.
Key press doesn't work. So, that's all I want to do. I don't know. I haven't seen this where we attach multiple events using one event listener. which is why I was wondering and suspecting that it's not possible. But I hadn't looked. Okay, I'm gonna get onto this. We'll do it together, but we're gonna walk through it together and we'll do like call and response. So what we want to do is actually make our counter work so that when we click on a button, our counter increments. So what we need to do first is get the H1 element from the page and save it to a variable called myCounter. Ooh, how do I get an element from the page by its tag name? Is that possible? It is. Is that what it's called? What? So var what's the tag name? H1? And we will console.log my counter to make sure it's working. It is. Yeah, no doubt this will work. It does not. Okay. We only have one, so we're just going to do that. Next, we need to declare a variable called counter index and set it equal to 0. So when the page has loaded, when the page is loaded, we want to set the text of our header to the current value of our counter so that the final HTML is h1 counter equals 0. Ooh, interesting. We have to unpack that one, right? What's the first step in number 3? When the page is loaded, yeah. How do we do that?
Oh, on page one, set ready.
How do we want to do it? Window dot onload like that is equal to a function, maybe like that. Yep. That's it. So that's part 1. Thank you, Michael. Part 2 is we need to take our H1 that we just got and set the text so that it's equal to counter and then the value of our current counter index. Does anybody remember how to set text in a DOM node? Sorry? Yeah. So how do I do that? Walk me through it. Yeah, so let's do counter plus counter index, something like that. And then I don't have anything up here, do I? Fresh, cool, that worked. Absolutely. My counter dot counter text equals counter plus counter index. So for step 4, we want to add an event listener to the button so that when it is clicked, the value of counter index is incremented by 1, and the new value is added to the page. Man, who wants to walk me through that one?
Sorry, can you go back and explain what's happening with your text?
Yeah. So my counter is our DOM node, right? It includes, it's an object that has a number of properties, including one that represents the text inside the H1 element, so between these two brackets here. And it's a string. And what we're doing is creating a new string and overriding that value with our new string. Cool.
Is there, like, whether you're using window.onload or .mint, like, will there ever be a case that matters? Or which is, like, most commonly used?
I don't know. I don't know, because I don't use it very often. Oh, I don't.
Use document,
No, I don't use that either.
I'm just not working on events.
Yeah, I just don't use them. I've always just assumed that if the JavaScript file is running, then the page is loaded, which is, for better or for worse. I think a window.onload is more common, like the one that people will use more often. But the benefits of ready state change is when the page is loading or interactive, you can be processing, right? Your JavaScript is running because you know that the page is interactive. So you can be processing data or getting data or something like that. And then when the window is complete, either because ready state is equal to complete or window.onload is fired, then you might have some of your data or most of your data already, and you can fire your app.
It's probably useful in a single page application.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. That's exactly what I was thinking. Okay, let's handle step 4 and then let's go on a break. We need to add an event listener to this button. So first we have to get the button, right? Var button equals document dot query selector dot JS button. Who wants to walk me through attaching an event to this button? While we're waiting for somebody to volunteer, I'll pull up slips, and then poor Chris will be picked.
I'll be there. I'll be there.
Oh, you'll do it? Great. How do I do it?
So button dot add event listener. Parentheses split.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you trying to do to us, man?
And then I don't know if it's right, but I just basically well, I was gonna say, you don't have to put the, I guess I was gonna say put the line in the onload function. I guess you don't have to. Yeah, refreshing the page.
Nope. I like what you're thinking, though. So what do we want to do inside of our function so that our button will work?
Add one to my counter.
Yeah, so
or counter
counter
index. So.
plus plus, and then what do we want to do?
That's it. Is that it?
Let's run it. How about that?
Oh, yeah. Okay. See that.
So the only last thing that we want to do is come back to my counter and set or reset the inner text equal to counter plus the new counter index. And now if I refresh the page, every time I click this, the number updates. So that's all. Thank you so much.
Do you need,
Oh, back to the code.
do you
I will
need-
leave the code up.
Do you need the counter index plus plus? Could you just add a one inner text every time?
Well, this is a string, so that would get complicated.
Like in.
All right.
Wait, could you add counter index plus plus in that one?
Yeah. Like in a
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can do this.
Okay.
Yeah. Is this what you meant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Or
you can absolutely do this. What I thought you were referring to is taking the string inner text and trying to increment the number inside the string, which would get complicated and would require like getting that string, that number out, and then converting it to a number, and then incrementing it, and then literally doing this again.
So those stupid like site counters and like their
Yeah.
2000s was just basically doing this.
I think those are making a comeback. I really do. Yeah. So that's probably happening on the server. That counter, and then that number. No, I don't know. Maybe you could do like some AJAX and some sockets and have it updated in real time.
Just making it comeback.
You can't do it like this.
No, because if you click it, it'll go to 0 again, and then it'll start.
Oh, interesting. Oh, interesting. That's kind of weird. Whoops. Weird. Okay. All right. Break. PB&J time. Soda time. Let's come back in 5 minutes. Sorry the breaks are short today, guys. And then we'll finish up everything that we've got for this lesson. So, yeah.
Intertext within the body.
You're not each one, and you see how probably created
Oh, intertext.
So this name is the same which would be expected.
What is the difference?
So it's one of those default attributes or.
When you.
Yeah, but I'm not calling that passive. I understand this this attribute here, and you set almost like a function, but I'm not. What does that work? You, unless it's this content.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, those two.
Yeah.
So
I'll check the docs to be sure. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's expecting you. So,
What exactly?
Oh, yeah. Two, but we can do that.
So you don't have to have it, but like the concept of using
This function, it knows the log, of the event, so we want to do something with that event that we're doing. In this case, reference, like, false.
So it's when the
Just like-
value of that. If I use any other word.
Here.
it's
As long as this, if you don't just want to reference that.
change the reference.
See that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So this function.
Yeah, I think that might be.
So we're storing their function in a variable. For this column with the value. So this is referencing.
Exactly. When we place event. Yeah, is it expected to be passive? Is it a temporary variable or is it like this is one?
I'm trying to understand.
So this is a array.
Yeah.
To our when the browser calls this function, we're gonna pass the
Yeah.
yeah.
It, for some reason, I don't know,
And then
so
whether or
we
not
put
we
zero at
actually
the
get
end, it's placeholder.
That's an array when you
So you,
like elements in there, so that from the zero
so the
signifies
event
the first.
that's the default.
Oh, okay.
in JavaScript.
Makes sense.
So I think
Like we
that then
query selector.
should not.
Selector all.
Yeah,
I guess if we just say query selector.
but you don't have to call it that here. You can call it E.
Right.
Yeah, but then there's color change from reds, white ones, to added and so that was something that, yeah.
That's how
You can call it T, you can call it anything, and then it will always be that option.
But then what is weird, just one.
Yeah.
I thought it was like more. So,
yeah, I don't know why I changed the color. But it is, as you said, just like a variable that we're signing.
it's, okay.
Here's why you can changing it and then printing it out.
I have another one,
Okay.
I have to figure out.
So whatever you got. Two.
This is my fault.
All right, how's it going, you guys?
It's a classic.
Did everybody get a break? Get a PB&J, get a soda? Yes, no, maybe.
Then it must be.
Well, maybe yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah.
The point is that you're exactly right. It's listening to something you can touch on something.
Yeah, you can use this. It will be, I'm actually not sure what the value of this will be. And jQuery changes the value of this. So this inside the event handler is usually the event object,
Yes.
right? I don't know. I don't think that that's native JavaScript.
So how do you refer back to the?
We're about to talk about that. Yeah. So, let's see. Boom. All right. Look at this craziness. It is like a game. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to build out increase by 1, decrease by 1, increase by 5, decrease by 5. And then we'll use this to track how many points people get in class for, I don't know what, nothing. No points, sorry. So this is exercise number 3. We have this index.html page, which we just saw. It includes the 4 buttons and our counter. The counter is the same as before, but we have 4 buttons now. Each button has a class, JS button, and then each class has a data attribute with an incrementer. And that incrementer is either 1, 5, -1, or -5. And what these instructions here are going to do is help us in walking through building out each of those counters so that they all work. Are you guys pumped? Yeah. Okay. So we need to get an array of all of the buttons. Excuse me. How do I get an array of elements? Someone we haven't heard from yet before today. I should have opened slips.
What do you call it?
Slips? Or what did I call it before? Random student picker or something like
Yeah.
that? Okay, I'll open up random student picker.
Slip.
Slips is what we called it when I was in WDI. Yeah. Still time to volunteer. And that's yeah, let's create a variable. What would you like to call our variable? Right. Let's call it buttons. What else do I do? Right now, we're just trying to get all of the buttons. Query selector all. Perfect, yeah. Yeah, perfect. So next, we want to write an event handler that will console.log you clicked a button whenever one of these buttons is clicked. We have an array of buttons here. We're going to loop over it and attach our event to each one. So who wants to help me with my loop first? I'll just use the picker. Felipe. Yeah, we're going to loop over this array of buttons.
So,
Yeah, 4.
4, 5.
Yeah, perfect. Absolutely perfect. Want to keep going? So this is our loop. Inside of our loop, we're going to get a button based on this loop index, and we're going to attach an event handler to it. Okay. Hold on. How do we get an item out of an array with this I? Did that work? Yeah, that works. Now we need to attach an event listener to this. How do we attach event listeners? Yeah, there it is. Perfect. All right, fit on. So we've got our individual button. We've got our event listener. What is our event listener? What does the function add event listener take as its 2 arguments? Yep. The event that we want to listen for. Yeah, function. And then all we need to do for now in this function is console.log, yeah, to click a button. Cool. So this is a review of what we just did, right? We're adding in a loop, but otherwise we're taking a DOM node and we're using add event listener to attach an event. So I've saved this. I'm going to come back to the browser and I'm going to refresh here, open up the console, and every time I click one of these buttons, the string you click the button gets printed out. With clicked spelled incorrectly. Because I don't know how to spell.
This is maybe a silly question. When you
No silly questions.
when in my add it's like all in one line, but yours formats nicely to this.
Oh. Yeah, that's my bad. If you come to view toggle soft wrap, it will start wrapping the characters at 80 characters. So it won't all be on one long line. Yeah. Under view, toggle soft wrap. It's a great question. I don't know. That's a great question. Yeah, why isn't it on by default? That's the real question. So let's see. The next step is we need to refactor our event handler so that it console.logs the event object. And then we're going to spend a minute poking around the event object. Who wants to help me with that? Yeah.
So you have the same just console log buttons.
All right. So what am I console logging?
Buttons I.
What's that going to log?
Should log the current.
Event, or the current button, excuse me. When one of these buttons is clicked, what we want is that event, that actual, or not the object that represents that click.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know how to do that? Or do you want to help me do that? You don't have to. Yeah?
I mean, I just don't know what it is.
Is it the event and the function?
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Oh, we just log it.
Yeah. So whether we take it as a parameter or not, when our event handler gets called, the browser is going to pass our handler this event object as an argument. When we define our function, we define it with the parameter of the event. And then we have access to that event inside of our function under the alias of event. We can call this anything though. It's really common to see it just called E. Oops, E or EV. It's EV, like that. We're going to use event. So now, when I go back to the page and refresh, and I click on one of these buttons, we get this object, which is the object that we saw earlier, the slide about the event object. Has all the same elements in it as before.
So actually, I read that wrong, and so that we're just like logging the object.
Oh.
And this does work.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. It just, you can't like use the element back.
So if I console log this. Oh, there we go. Cool. So Lindsay had asked earlier what the value of this would be here. jQuery, I guess jQuery is not doing anything, right?
Yeah, jQuery just masking that.
Yeah. Well, what did we decide the value of this was inside of the event handler in jQuery?
You can't use just this. It has to be like you have to do call jQuery and then this and then assign this to this variable.
Oh, I see.
So
That's right.
there are a number of those.
That's right. Oh, that's so that it becomes a jQuery object.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the keyword is this.
Okay. So we're talking about jQuery, but the important part about this is that the value of this inside of our event handler is the element itself, right here. So
We still need to pass in event.
no, it's not. That's not related to events. So I'm going to copy this and comment it out and move it down. So our next instruction is to refactor our event handler so that it will console log the target, which we kind of just did with this. A more common way of doing it is getting the target from the event object itself. So this event is an object. It contains a ton of properties. One of those properties is the target, which is the thing that was actually clicked. All right. So I'm going to comment this out. And then we're going to walk through this activity together. So what we want to do now is, instead of always incrementing our counter by 1, increment it or decrement it based on which button was clicked. So we're going to get our for loop here, and we're going to paste that in. And then what we need to do is write some code here inside of our event handler that will tell us which button was clicked, what the incrementer value for that button is, and then change our counter index based on that, and then rewrite our counter, just like we did before. So that was a lot. Let's start by setting the counter index. So var counter index is equal to 0, just like last time. And then let's do something like var heading. What did we call it before, actually? Counter, I think. Is equal to document.createSelector h1. So now we're all ready to change our counter, right? We can do counter.innerText is equal to this. But we want to do line 70 inside of our event handler and change the value of counter index based on which one of these buttons was pushed. So let's explore this event target a little more. I'm going to console.dir event.target. I'm going to go to the browser. I'm going to refresh it, and I'm going to push this decrease by 1. And now we get this button as an object that we can explore. Yeah.
I have a question about the non-modifiers. Are there multiple ways to get the same? Like I noticed under target there was outer HTML. But we did that target, not target.
There's event.outer.html.
Yeah, oh, maybe that's what. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if there is an event.outer.html. I think the event.target has an outer HTML.
Yeah, that's where I saw it. So
Yeah.
Curious.
We talked about those last time.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we continue with this and then you ask that question after class?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so these are all the elements, or keys and properties within our DOM node, the object that represents our DOM node. We saw a lot of these last time, right? Like child nodes, children, class name, height and width, data set. Everything about that node is represented here, including that data attribute. Does anybody want to take a guess as to where that data attribute lives inside this object? Yeah, data set. Tried to subtly hint at it. But yeah, there it is. So under data set, we have data set as an object. within which all of the data attributes in the HTML get built as key value pairs. So we only have one, and it's the increment. And then it's a string, which is the value that we assign in the HTML.
So is this data incrementer it's not something you created?
No, that's an actual browser API. That's part of HTML. Well, you'll always get a string for the value. What's that? No. Yeah, you can put 3.14 in there. It'd be a string, and you have to parse ends, but yeah.
Curious.
Cool. So if event.target represents this whole object, how could we maybe get this incrementer value? Yeah. So something like var incrementer, there you go, equals event.target dot, what was it?
Data set.
Yeah. Incrementer. There we go. That's exactly right, you guys. So let's console.log incrementer and see what we get back. Boom, look at that. It works.
So is there no increment or just increments by negative numbers?
Yeah. Just for simplicity.
That's what makes it like really awesome.
Yeah. This way we only have to get one property from the object. And we don't have to write an if statement or account for whether or not one is there and one's not. Cool, so we've got this value. It's a string that contains a number. And what we want to do is add that number to our counter index. Does anybody remember? We only talked about it briefly. How to convert a number inside of a string to an actual JavaScript number. What was it? Parse int, yeah. So what does parse int do? How does it work? Yeah, that was a dumb question. Thank you for pointing out. Okay, so what we want to do is counter index plus equals parse int actually spell incrementer right. I'm only bad at spelling when I'm up here in front of the class. The rest of my life, I'm okay at.
What's the 10 for?
The 10 is what's called the radix, and that's what sets the base value for this conversion. So we could set it to 8, and then we would be doing octal numbers with a base value of 8. But I'm not good at math. I'm not going to deal with that. So I'm going to pass in 10, which is the default. But we have to pass in 10 because sometimes it can be finicky. And now we can counter.inner text equals our new counter index. And we should be good again. Cool beans. It works. Great job, you guys. Yes, absolutely. So I'll leave that up because I want to come back here and see into assignment ls.
It's only a metro fair machine.
I know, right? Well, now you can go to WMATA and say, I'm a contractor, I'm a software developer, I'm interested in building software for you guys. Would you please pay me a lot of money? And maybe they'll say yes, I don't know. And then you can fix it. Maybe after week 10. How about that? After week 10 of this class, then you'll be in good. You build your contracting business a nice website. That here, here. All right. So this is what we're going to do for homework tonight. But I want to talk about something first. If we go back here, we're getting an array of our buttons, and then we're looping over our buttons and attaching the exact same event listener to every single one. So how many event listeners are we going to have at the end of this? 4. Yeah. How efficient do you think that is? On a scale of super efficient to super inefficient. It's a 4. Put on, everybody. Okay. So there's a better way that we can do this. And to illustrate that, here we have a grid with 500 elements in it. Are we going to want to get every single one and loop through them all and attach the exact same event listener to every single one, and then have 500 event listeners in one page? No, not at all. Yeah, this is kind of like Minesweeper, but we're going to do something like this. Actually, yeah. This is what you guys are going to do for homework. Or we can do something like blue. Add some red. Oh, pink. Okay, okay. I don't know if you can add hex values. Maybe. I don't think I built it out to do that, but it might work anyway.
Those are all values,
It just changes them. Yeah, perfect. So this is what we're going to do for homework, but instead of creating 500 event listeners, now that with what we know about attaching event listeners to objects, what we know about structuring HTML pages, and what we know about the event object and the event.target subobject, can anybody think of maybe a better way to do this?
You try to twist it.
Yeah, everything you guys all said together. Together was perfect. Actually, I don't know. Let's start with Mark.
So we state of page changes.
Yeah.
Look for that target.
Yeah. What about Miriam? What were you guys saying?
I was thinking like use this.
Yeah. Or what about maybe attaching an event listener on the parent container for all 500 of these?
Oh, inherit.
Yeah. So events propagate, which is what we're talking about right now. Which means that if I click on a button, when you think of how like the document tree or the node tree that we talked about last time, or how an HTML page is structured, so I come back here. If I click on a button, I'm also clicking on its container, and on the body, and on the HTML page, because these are nested. So if I click on this button, an event is going to happen, but an event is also going to happen on the container, this content div, and on the body, the container for that, and on the HTML page, the container for that. So rather than getting every single button, we're going to attach an event listener to the counter, the containing element, and then inside of our event listener, check what the target was, and then get our incrementer that way. Or if we didn't click on a button, for instance, we clicked on this H1, just do nothing. And then we only have one event.
So if you attach to the div element in this example, all buttons have that as a property or method, or do I have to go to parent, like button dot parent and then grab?
So our event will go, let's do it. How about that? So let's see, what do we want? I'm going to comment all of this out. I'm going to do var counter, var buttons. I think I actually already declared buttons. So let's do var container, yeah, content is equal to document.query selector dot content. There we go. Content.add event listener. Click. So I'm getting this content element, I'm adding an event listener to it, listening for a click event, and when that click event happens, I'm console logging the target. Not different from what we were doing before. So the first time I clicked over here, and I got this content in. The second time I clicked here, and the target, which I'm console logging, was the button. So we can do something like this. If e.target.tag name is equal to button,
That not case sensitive.
I think it has to be uppercase. Yeah, it does.
What has to be uppercase?
I don't know why. I think it's dumb. We have to do it uppercase because it's uppercase here, and we're doing a strict comparison. So if it's lowercase, then this won't be true. Our comparison won't be true. Does this kind of answer your question? Yeah. So now my event target is this button. I can do the exact same thing I was doing before, where I say var incrementer. Actually, I can just copy and paste it. And yeah, this should all work. What's that?
Added it for the H1 and
Well, so it's on our container. So if we look back at the structure of our HTML, this is what the event listener is on. So anything within our content div, the div of the class of content, will call that event listener, or like trigger that event. And that's because events propagate. So the click on one is a click on container all the way up to doctrine. All right. So your homework is Pixar, what I just showed you. I have steps written out for how you do it, just like the exercises that we did here. It's due at the beginning of class. There's an optional reading reading about jQuery if you're interested. We're not going to cover jQuery in this class. We're going to use vanilla JavaScript as we have been. But if you want to use jQuery or if you want to learn jQuery, I've provided resources. Assignment. So once you've filled out your exit tickets,
Another good teacher.
what's that?
He's clapping.
I did a slow clap.
All right, you can leave right now. Everybody else, no. Once you fill out your exit ticket, thanks Joe for being such a great TA, and then go home.
What do you got?
Do you have a question?
Yeah, I answered one question.
Oh.
Yeah.
Should we exercise as well? Students can exercise.
The rest of the exercises are not assigned. They're there for you if you want to do them. Yeah. Only homework is Pixar.
There's no exit ticket.
There's no exit ticket. Oh yeah, that's right. Because Christine's not here to slack the exit ticket out to all of you guys, and our fill-in TA. There we go.
So basically your like card thing is using this type of
Oh, my card thing.
yeah, it's like using a very small grid or very
No, I have a good one. So it's similar idea, but I was using HTML Canvas and a library called Paper.js to track. It generates a SVG path along using, so mouse move is an event that you can listen to, and on mouse move, the event target has the X and Y coordinates for the cursor or the mouse. And so on mouse move, we're going to take those X and Y coordinates, push them into an array, which is then going to be, we're going to build a SVG path.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you want to be like a super overachiever on your homework PixArt assignment, that's all you. It's all you. Yeah. Question.
TBD.
When I open it from, I don't have
Yes, it's good part of the assignment is you have to build it. So that's right.
What? Not crap. I mean,
So you
no, I'm not trying to do that this week. I would like to do it sometime.
yeah, I do too.
I feel like that'd be
Hey.
such a good one.
Couldn't find what was on. I thought this was something. But nothing happened.
Let's go back. Thank you.
So it was working previously.
Thank you.
I did
Have a good weekend. Because this isn't happening at all. I just, it's not.
I don't know why they just stopped working. And then I guess I can close the page and then reopen it.
Yeah, we can actually
What was it?
You had create like all, which is an array.
That's what.
We just want to create something. Strangely, that doesn't throw an error.
I need space.
Cool. Where do you want?
Counter.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Perfect.